What's up, guys? It's Damp. So I'm going to give you my updated guide on the Jester today, and kind of keep in mind that what you're seeing in front of you isn't like my typical videos where I have almost a meta set up in front of you. This is on an endless run, and this is the campaign I use to make all my videos, so I don't want to end the endless run, so we're doing Jester today. So kind of what we'll talk about with the Jester is really he can be one of the more complex characters, and that he's so good at a lot of different things. It's almost like before you go into a run with a Jester, you need to make a decision on how are you going to play him. Are you going to play him like a bounty hunter? Are you going to play him like a stress healer, or a buffer, and maybe somebody just to finish off characters? But if you don't make that decision before you go into the dungeon and before you make your party composition, a lot of people don't like the Jester because they don't understand why, he's so quote unquote weak, because he has been in the past. Since early access, he's debatably was one of the weakest characters, then one of the strongest, then nerfed. So there's been a lot of change to the Jester, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about with the update to the Color of Madness. So as we look at the Color of Madness and how it's changed the Jester, is we won't go into all the specifics of patch notes and changes and those kind of things, but he is almost a necessary take when you look at an endless run, and when you look at a lot of boss fights, he's extremely beneficial, especially when you're looking at high HP bosses. He's very beneficial if you build him the right way. So we're going to kind of talk about two different builds. So we'll start there. So in looking at his combat skills, this is build 1, and this is what I would use when you're doing an endless run. And obviously you can change these in and out as you want, but if you're going to do an endless run, this is what I would recommend. So primarily he's going to be there to bleed and to finish off characters in the second and third rows primarily. I really don't use finale. I don't use solo, because the party that's considered quote unquote meta, I guess, for an endless run, which this is in my opinion one of them, doesn't play as nice to solo and moving around a lot. Not that it can't, it just isn't really designed around that. So as we look at the Jester, you're going to take Harvest, you're going to take Slice Off, Battle Ballad, and Inspiring Tune. You're going to use Inspiring Tune selectively, but we did Trinket for it in this particular build because you're trying to last as long as you can. It's almost like a no-brainer. So you're going to take the Dirge, which is the crystalline trinket you get from the new wagon, and then Bright Tambourine is what I take in this area because this is considered that it's in light. So because the torch is above 75, that does play here. So as you look at this particular build, what are you going to do with him? He primarily sits slot 3 in this build, and you can start the fight off with Battle Ballad, or you can use Battle Ballad when, let's say you have corpses in slots 2 and 3, and he can't really contribute as much to the fight. You can use it as a filler. I'm only de-stressing people with this party. Keep in mind that I'm only doing it when they get about probably over 40 stress, because you're going to heal for about probably stress heal for about 17 to 22 on most stress heals with this particular Jester build for the endless run. So as you look at the Jester and you're like, damn, look at how much stress you have. Well, if you go back to my Twitch VOD from a couple days ago, you'll see we had absolutely 0, and then we did 2 bosses. We ran into Thing from the Stars. So this stress, I have no doubt it'll come down for sure. But you're really trying to utilize high crit in this build that's brought to you from the additional command here, right here. This helps immensely. So the high crit is going to trickle down some of the reduced stress for the party members. You're really using his stress heal when you have somebody that's getting way out of whack. They're getting 40 to 60 when everybody else is in the teens. So that's when you're going to use it. So with this build, primarily you're going to start off with, You may start off with Battle Ballad, or what I like to do is start off with Harvest and get bleeds going, or use it to finish off what the Shield Breaker has already put down with Impale, and you're just really finishing off their turns, and that's how I kind of look at it. Eliminating the enemy turns as quickly as possible. So that's really what he's there for. So with that, as we look at the quirks that you're going to take with this particular build, if you're looking at a particular build to take just for endless runs, so you look at the mercenary side of this, Luminous is really good. Precise Strikers is pretty good, but it's really better if you look at taking Finale and using Precise Striker. That's actually a little better. But really, Luminous, you want to take Evasive. You know, dodge tanky abilities are really probably the best. Speed and dodge are good. Luminous is probably the best for the Jester, in my opinion, in whichever way you do with him, whether you're on an endless run or not. As you look at the camping skills for him, it's all about really reducing stress as much as possible. This is probably the best build, depending on the situation, obviously, but generally speaking, the best build for an endless run is going to look like what you see here. Because really, he's there to reduce stress. So, as far as diseases, you guys can see I don't have a disease cure person, and he's had the worries for quite a bit, but it really hasn't been an issue, and neither has the rabies. So I get additional damage, but when I'm only using Harvest and Slice Off, it doesn't help as much as what it would be if I was running Finale, for sure. So, again, as far as trinkets, anything you have that'll reduce stress is good. But also, I could see you using any of the cloaks that give you additional dodge could be helpful here. Because I personally don't think that most of the mobs on endless runs, you know, the mobs that are colored this way, the farmers, that their accuracy isn't high enough to get through the dodge once you start to really buff. So if you were, again, to buff it, he becomes pretty dodge tanky. So as you look at the Jester from the standpoint of, let's say, a general run, or we'll look at it from a boss run perspective, because that build was pretty good for a general run, generally speaking. You may want to actually take this off and switch it to here, and then switch these on and off as you see fit so that he's able to hit the first row. But let's say you were going to take him on a boss run, it would look probably something like this, or like this. Depending on your situation and how your stress levels are running, how high your crit is in a party, generally speaking, I'd say this would be one of the better ones. Reason being is you're going to use him to get through those tanky bosses and run high crit on him. So as far as good perks to take, you'd want Precise Striker for sure. Luminous is still good, but not as good. Deadly would be really good. Slugger would be great. Those would be like the must takes as far as if you're using him to finish off bosses, to deal high amounts of damage, you know, get through creatures that have high HP. That's what I would use him for. So you'd run a Dirk Stab, which helps you move around in case you get shuffled, as well as uses you to get in the position for Finale for sure. You have Solo that you'd use to bring him to the front and then hit the Finale, and then Battle Ballad just to get buffs to get that crit up. Because you can see if you buff yourself, use Battle Ballad, your self buff, your Finale gets 30% damage and 8% crit, which is huge. And then you pop Solo. So if you're hitting Battle Ballad, Solo, Finale, he's going to do an insane amount of damage, generally speaking, from what he typically would. You can see him hit anywhere probably between the 40s and 70s, depending on how high his damage is. So as you go down and you look at the camping skills, they really don't change too much. You can switch out Tiger's Eye. Depending on who you're running with, you could switch out Tiger's Eye. Hopefully stress isn't a big thing as you go and you look at a going on a boss fight. Hopefully you're able to camp right before the boss fight and you can pop Tiger's Eye with whoever else you're running with. But he can be very, very strong with like Shield Breaker or Hellion in the front. You've got Bounty Hunter or somebody else that hits for a ton of damage. Then you have him. So you can get 3 big hits in on a row 4 boss or a row, 3-4 boss if they're taking up 2 spaces with that kind of a party. Um, as you look at trinkets to bring for like a boss killing jester, I would say you're going to bring Ancestor's Pen if you've got it. Surgical gloves for sure, really good. Anything that's going to give you additional crit and additional damage help immensely. Um, so fill those in, fill those blanks in with what you've got available in your trinket stash. There isn't anything that's 100% must take or meta for his trinkets because he's so versatile when it comes to trying to use him to kill a boss. But you're looking for increased damage and increased crit. Diseases, rabies is borderline something you can take as well as the fits. You never want worries. Rabies, depending on his accuracy and what quirks you're running with him, rabies can be good. You could use, the focus ring to offset some of that accuracy and still give you a little bit of crit. And then you have that additional damage. So I have had a jester in the past who's no longer with us that had rabies that I tried to keep as long as I could, and I'd run a focus ring and then the Ancestor's Pen or surgical gloves, and it ran really, really well. He was able to do a really high amount of damage and finish off make a lot of boss fights go a lot faster. So with that, that's pretty much the best build as you're looking at a jester and where you're going to go with him. In my opinion, he's still one of the best classes in the game. He's able to disarm your traps. He's able to do a little bit of scouting. I think he's a great filler and one of my favorite characters as far as versatility. And I actually still have him in the top half as far as classes go. I have him borderline top 5 as far as picking your heroes and who's the best. But in an endless run, this is, in my opinion, one of the best parties you can run. And he is significantly better than the Houndmaster, in my opinion, in the dungeon because of his flexibility. He's a little more flexible, and as you aren't looking at scouting as much with him, I think his stress heals are a little better, especially when it comes to the camping side of it. So I think Jester is, in the endless run, he's almost an absolute take. So with that, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks very much for watching. I'm looking at probably within the next few videos, you'll see my update to the top 10 tips, which should coincide with some of the rest of you guys getting the Color of Madness. So I'm going to update it for that. So stay tuned for that. Either way, thanks very much for watching. See you in the next video.